Oh, well, what I find interesting about it is a couple things. He was a Republican senator fighting against the left and the worst excesses of liberalism for 30 years, right? He was, I believe, a colonel in the Air Force, served for 30 years, active duty combined with reserve time. And so after he died, there was a like kind of trending on social media, a bunch of people just talking shit about him and roasting him as he died and everything. And yeah, I kind of expect that from the left. But what was interesting was that there were so many people on the right doing it. The, America First crowd.
Yeah.
And I just find it interesting that they keep on aligning themselves in positions that are fundamentally anti-conservative. Like whatever you thought, I mean, it seemed like most of the criticism about Lindsey Graham was that he was a boomer con. Even if that's a boomer con.
Oh, but I'm not familiar with that term. But something about an old man.
That's like one of the George Bush Republican types.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what a boomer con is. They're a boomer and an old school conservative.
Okay. I got you.
And so that was a lot of the criticism was there, and that he was tough on Iran, and that he was a war hawk and everything. And that's why it's trending with so many people of the America First crowd. And I just say, like, a couple things. It's kind of interesting. The America First crowd keeps on aligning themselves with leftists who are fundamentally out to destroy them and the right. They keep on aligning with the communists. That's the first thing that I find interesting. Also, I find it very weak and not masculine to just be so anti-war, so anti like military. And what I find interesting about it is it's like, and I kind of feel this way about JD Vance. You got a generation of mostly millennial and Gen Z men in this country who basically want to live in the pod and eat the bugs, plug into the VR. They want they'd be the first people to tap into the matrix when it becomes available, and they don't want to work. They don't want to fight. They don't want the next greatest challenge. It's like they're expecting this socialist easy way out. And I think it's a big concern for people who actually love America that so many people in the America First crowd and on the right have aligned themselves with these socialist ideals and this pacifism and this unwillingness to have our country go out there and fight for like what we take. And it's really, I think a lot of it is because they kind of don't have a good comprehension of like how the economy works or how supply chain logistic works, or like even how the internet works. Like, for example, the U.S. Navy is responsible for over 90% of the global fiber optic cables that connect the internet from country to country, which is, incredibly important for our supply chain and our economy, especially in a country where we don't manufacture many raw materials outside of oil, right? I mean, we don't even have a single aluminum mine in the United States or aluminum processing center. So it's like we are reliant on foreign nations for this. We are relying on global trade. Whether you like that or not, I don't really care. What I care about is that while we are reliant on it, we have control. We have dominance over that. Like, we should always have, I guess, the most leverage when it comes to bargaining positions at all time. And we only seek that through our military and through our willingness to throw a punch when another country gets out of line. If we lose that, then we lose everything. And people don't understand that. And they're all like, this is the same crowd that hates the banks and all that. But what happens when America is not in control of all these supply chains, when we don't have logistical dominance, and goods like vehicles, cars, for example, shoot up 40, 50, 60%. Or what if Trump didn't do all the things with like Venezuela and giving out permits to oil, and Iran decided to close the Strait of Hormuz on their own? Like they could have done it at any time. We'd be paying $10-12 a gallon for gas like they're doing in England right now, bro. It's like this constant state of pacifism and isolationism is what they call it. I call it weakness. I call it cowardice. I call it you're taking your ball and you're running home because you're all done and you want to go home so that mommy can give you a chocolate milk, make you some chicken nuggets while you watch SpongeBob SquarePants. That's what's going on with an entire generation of men. And I expect this from the liberals. But seeing this from so many, of those on the right, it's disheartening. It really is. It's not masculine at all. That's not the American spirit. That's not what our ancestors fought for. I know you had lots of ancestors you fought in prior wars, just like we did. Same here. I don't know what's going on with this pacifist, socialist, European light version of young American men, and some of them on the right, many of them on the right. And that's what the whole Lindsey Graham debacle made me think about, bro.
Warriors in the United States of America are becoming a thing of the past. And here at Crossfire Republic, we're putting an end to that. We need to bring back masculinity into government. We need to restore masculinity into the conservative men of this country and bring back 80s America. Let's go.
Yep, that's right.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Crossfire Republic. We're back here again. I'm your host, Cujo. With me, as always, co-host Casey. How you doing, brother?
Great. Happy to be here.
All right. Today, we're going to talk about the congressional hearing that just took place where Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe testified on the fraud that's taking place across the country. We're also going to be talking about the passing of Senator Lindsay Graham, what that means for Congress and all things pertaining. We're going to give an update on what's going on with the Iranian war. Lots of crazy breaking news just happening. And then finally, we're going to get into what's going on in Mexico in terms of immigration. And before we get started, you know what we got to do? We got to lock and load, baby. Got to throw in a dippy dap for the lippy lap. Shout out Skilly Goat Gilton.
And the rest of Panjway's bastards.
Let's go. Always got to shout out the boys of Panjway. But before we get started on all that, Casey, something just came across my radar. High importance, real high level shit Congress should be dealing with. And I hope you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the time change. Have you heard of this new Senate bill that's coming through to eliminate daylight savings time?
Yeah, so I did hear about that, and it seems like the strangest thing, just because of course, we all have. We've grown up with daylight savings time. It's something that we're accustomed to. We know that we're going to lose an hour every fall until the spring and get that hour back later. What do you think about that? How do you think that's going to affect our daily productivity throughout the year?
Okay, so I got some deep hot takes on this that I was thinking up while I was driving in the car earlier today, and I think it has terrible implications towards what's the impact of productivity in humans is going to be. Before I get started, though, I want to say that they tried this once before, back in 1974. They eliminated daylight savings time. They lasted 1 year and they said, we got to get rid of this shit. This was a dumb idea. But here we are, 50 years in the future, and we're right back at it, same discussion. Now, here's my perspective, right? Winters suck. They absolutely suck. I need the sunlight. I need the warmth. I'm getting old. I don't want the cold anymore. I need that sunshine. I need the long extended days. I want the sun setting at 9:30 p.m. So I get the appeal for getting rid of it so that instead of falling back and losing that hour and having an earlier sunset, we push that sunset out 1 hour. Now, here's the problem, though, is that what difference is the sun setting at 4:50 or the sun setting at 5:50 gonna make? Like, in all reality, whether it sets at 5 or 6, That still blows, bro. Most people are just barely getting home at 6 p.m. And here's my real concern, though. One of the things that I enjoyed about the daylight savings time is I pride myself on getting up early, getting the day started. And I feel like when that time change happens, and now I've been getting up at 4:30. Now all of a sudden my time that I'm getting up is 3:30. I like this, bro. And it keeps me shifting so that I'm getting up earlier. I'm being more productive. I like that whole thing. Now let's look at the counter side. In the winter time, some of the latest sunrises in the country, because of course it differs, right? We have Eastern time zone stretching from here to here. 7 p.m. is going to have a different look of the sun here than it is here, right? And so you have sunrises taking place at 8 or basically 8 a.m. in the morning with the time change. If we eliminate this, we're talking sunrises at close to 9 a.m. 9 a.m., bro. I've already crushed the gym, read a book. I've already did most of everything in my day before 9 a.m. The sun's not coming up. What concerns me is this epidemic that's plaguing the United States of America, which is no accountability, no discipline, no strength, no grit. And to me, it feels like people are going to make the excuse of, well, the sun's not up until 9. I feel productive. That means I can sleep in until 8 o'clock and do all that. I think it promotes laziness and slothliness. And I think that's a problem for America. Why do we have to change it, bro? Just keep it the same. Why are we even worried about daylight savings time? Suck it up. Winners suck. Push through. Become like 80s America, where we just pushed through adversity. We toughed it out, gritted our teeth, bared down, buckled through, and it gave a sense of something to look forward to in the summer when you have the long days and the late sunsets. I say get over it, America. Quit whining about daylight savings time.
Yeah, well, I got a couple takes about this. The first thing is that it's really disappointing that Congress will be able to get some movement on this bill, but they can't pass a bill like the SAVE Act that requires ID to vote, which is an 80-20 issue nationwide. So that's just crazy. But of course, things work that way. The second thing I had is the same concern that you have, and how is this going to affect productivity? And I think, unfortunately, we've started to develop a culture that is too comfortable with sloth and that is too addicted to leisure. And this is because almost all of our major purchasing decisions outside of our mortgage or rent goes to mostly to leisure activities. And these are, reoccurring monthly payments that people have, all the different subscriptions, the gym memberships they don't use. I mean, even myself and all my jujitsu memberships, yes, it's exercise, but it's also a leisure activity. And we're just like really fortunate to be alive in this day and age, because if we were born, at the turn of the 20th century, we would never have time for this, because we would be so busy working all the time. And what bothers me about that is that as we get more leisure, some of our population becomes more lazy. It seems like another massive proportion of our population takes it for granted. Like we're supposed to have all this leisure or all this laying around time or all this time for Netflix and, Hulu and the YouTube and doom scrolling and everything else. And it's like everybody just takes that for granted. Like that's the natural state of humanity. And it's like, no, that's a very recent occurrence in human history. And, not being responsible with all that extra time is only going to lead to the downfall and removal of it.
It's a real problem. And I know that it's just a silly topic. That's kind of why I wanted to open up with it, because I think it speaks to a lot of societal issues that are going on. And man, I agree 100%. Just leave the thing alone. Why are we even focused on this when we have like crisis happening? We need to pass a Save America Act. There's nothing more important than ensuring the integrity of our elections. Otherwise, what's the point of even having the things? We might as well just pack up and let the government do whatever the hell they want. And that's the wrong answer. Moving into our first topic, I think we need to open up discussion about the congressional hearing that just took place, where investigative journalists Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe came to testify on behalf of all the fraud that they've uncovered in Minnesota, California, and New York. And, there's even been stuff popping up here in Colorado locally. They didn't uncover this, but it has been uncovered. And so this fraud thing that's taking place all over the nation is an epidemic. I think they said in the hearing that we have $120 billion of our tax money per year that goes out to basically fraudulent claims to these NGOs. And that's kind of what this congressional hearing was about. And what I found most interesting is that just like daylight savings time, this should be a nonpartisan issue, right? Like, we have our tax money that belongs to all of us. Unless you're not paying into taxes, then I'd say you probably should sit this conversation out, because you probably have a biased opinion. And that should be a nonpartisan issue. We should all care where our tax money is going, and we should be cared that it's getting spent on, because that's $120 billion that, instead of being used to better our infrastructure, our roads, our schools, and actually helping people who needed to be helped, this money was being stolen from those people and given to these organizations that aren't actually providing anything for anybody. They're stealing the money, and that should be a nonpartisan issue. And what's disappointing to me is that at the hearing today, there was no Democrats there to ask any questions or be involved in this hearing. And I think that that's a failure on the Democrats' side, because this is a nonpartisan issue. This is cheating everybody.
The fact that Democrats weren't there to ask questions or participate in it is just yet another example that the Democrat Party in America is fundamentally anti-America, right? And that's why they want to continue this grift. They know that the people who are taking advantage of the taxpayers here and committing this type of fraud is directly benefiting their political system. That's also why they were on board with open illegal migration, with the open borders during Joe Biden's presidency that we saw at unprecedented rates. What they are doing is they are using taxpayer dollars to buy votes that will lead to generations of political domination, just like they do in California or in Massachusetts, for example, where 35% of the state votes for Republican, and yet there is zero representation. So I think that's another example of that. One thing that I find that's actually kind of funny is kind of two things, is that these organizations that are committing this fraud don't even try to do a good job of it. It's like, remember that sign, the Leering Center? It's like they're not even putting forth any effort, and it's a complete joke. I think the fact that so many of America, especially those on the right, have been memeing and ridiculing, shaming, and making fun of these fraudsters, it was probably the best strategy that we could do in gaining popular consensus against this immoral, unethical, and traitorous behavior to us. The second thing I want to leave you with is James O'Keefe also found during his sting operations a voter fraud as well. Now, nobody knows if it's enough voter fraud to change the outcome of the contested election in which Spencer Pratt was basically weirdly lost the election at the last minute with a dump of votes at 3 a.m. while everybody was asleep, which he has contested. And I believe the Trump administration has a FBI investigation into right now. So that's what James O'Keefe found. How he found it is just crazy. What he does is he hires these beautiful women to wear a hidden camera on them, and they go up to these like just 300-pound, complete incels, and flirts with them, says a couple nice things, gives them a little bit of attention, and they spill all the beans on everything. And that's just a tale as old as time itself.
Yeah, bro, it is hilarious. And I don't see anything wrong with it, right? We need to use strategies to uncover frauds. How it's uncovered doesn't matter. And I think attacking the how is, I mean, kind of what the Democrats have done. Gavin Newsom, or Governor Newsom, when Nick Shirley posted his video, came out on X or whatever platform it is, and says that he's slow. He says slow Shirley is the fraud. So basically trying to decredit what he had shown. And unless the videos are completely fabricated, there's no defense against that. You can devalue him as a person, as a journalist, and say just because he didn't come up through what's that journalism school up in Syracuse, that all of a sudden he's not qualified, which, by the way, proves a further point that college is a scam. Because how is it that Nick Shirley, with no formal education in journalism, was able to uncover and do the job better than most local journalists I've seen, which also, by the way, I think has set a fire to these local journalists? Because you know what I've been seeing here in Colorado Springs is I've been seeing these local news reporters from your ABCs and your Foxes and all these. I've been seeing them getting out there, pounding the pavement and tracking down some stories. And that's what they're supposed to be doing. That's old school, baby. That's 1980s America. Let's get more of that. And so Newsom criticized and condemned him. And not only that, but the Attorney General had his wife push for legislation, this basically Stop Nick Shirley Act, which is basically saying that if there's any sort of immigration or anything involved, that you can't go up and do what he did. You can't uncover the fraud. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist by nature, but it seems to me that if the Attorney General, who should be, leading the task force on finding fraud and eliminating fraud, tax money being stolen from taxpayers, it seems to me that they would want to be like, oh, hey, thanks for the help. Because here's another thing. I understand, there's a lot of companies and a lot of money flowing through everything. The government is very restricted in their resources. So I could see how it would be hard to go pound the pavement, find all this. And Nick Shirley committed all this time to that. And that's beautiful. But maybe they don't have all that extra time. But the proper response when he does uncover this is, hey, thanks for the heads up. I appreciate it. We're going to start investigating this. We're going to take care of the problem. But instead, they try to discredit him, smear him, run him through the dirt, and then try to take credit weeks later for saying, yeah, we uncovered the fraud themselves, which is what Nat Newsom did. And it's despicable and unbelievable that's the approach you take, because, well, we know, obviously, especially in this hearing, it was uncovered and pointed out, which it hasn't been a secret, right? They've had a couple congressional hearings involving this whole Minnesota debacle. And there were two Democrats who had at least one of them had a family member who was impacted because they weren't able to qualify for these social services that are allocated to help those American citizens. And why weren't they able to? Because they had all these NGOs just siphoning off all of the money and stealing it, so that people who truly need these resources aren't able to get those resources. And that's a true tragedy. Those two whistleblowers spoke out on it. And can you guess what happened?
No, what happened to them?
They were canceled, condemned, threatened, told to bury it by the Democratic Party there. Why? Because voting population of Somalian immigrants. And so it shouldn't have been a partisan issue. And Democrats should have, as soon as it found out, been like, oh, we want to end this, unless you're involved in it, which of course I could see why you wouldn't want it uncovered, because that's going to make you look bad. And I believe Governor Walz of Minnesota has dropped out of politics in general, from what I understand.
I'm interested to see if the FBI does uncover evidence of any Democrat politicians involved in any of these fraud schemes. To date, I don't believe any evidence has been uncovered. I do think it's possible that this is, a multitude of standalone acts. A bunch of people, essentially conning the government and conning the taxpayer. And my summation of it would be that the Democrats are kind of complicit for allowing it to happen, for being aware that it's happening, from taking benefit of this immoral and unethical behavior. But I don't think that they're necessarily organizing it. If that makes sense, or getting kickbacks and so forth.
Maybe not, but there were emails where one of the CEOs or whatever executives of one of these organizations reached out to one of the Congress people in Minnesota and told them to basically get the investigation off their back, and they complied to it. There was a congressional hearing. I think
I do remember that congressional hearing
So,
about that with that whistleblower. Now that you mention
if it looks like a duck, talks like a duck, and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So while it's not confirmed specifically that this is indeed the case, they were definitely at a bare minimum complicit in it. I agree.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It's probably not necessary to draw conclusions without proper evidence and all that stuff or whatever. But to me,
but there's definitely smoke.
There's definitely smoke.
There's definitely smoke
for sure.
But
sure.
What that raging fire is, we can't say.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, you also brought up another point, and about Gavin Newsom's reaction to the Nick Shirley video. I'm sorry, and when he exposed all the fraud in California, and I think that shows really that with the Democratic Party in America as it stands today, minus that guy from Pennsylvania, the senator out there, the Democratic Party is funnily anti-American. The mask is off at this point. And Gavin Newsom is not even trying to have a debate. He's not trying to counteract, Nick Shirley's vehicle with facts or even with a counter argument. He's attacking the messenger. And that just signifies that they have lost the debate, and they are aware that they have lost the debate. So they've moved past that. And I think people need to be aware of that on the right. I don't think that it means it's moved past it, that it's going to lead to violence. I think when I say he's moved past it and they've moved past it, I think the Democrats that are in positions of power in these, unipolar states like California, Massachusetts, Minnesota, I think what that means is that they are going to exercise their political power to the maximum capabilities that they have, and make things difficult as possible for the opposition. And that's something that we need to be aware of here, especially when we start thinking about wanting to align with some of these people, maybe because you hate Israel or something. At the end of the day, these are not American patriots. These are not people that love America. These are people that think America is dirty, disgusting, and hate our history. They hate our ancestors. I'm sorry to be so black-pilled on that, but that is the Democratic Party at this point. They are communists looking for a revolution.
The mask is off, and that's exactly what's happening. These people they're Marxists. Relabel it Democratic Socialist America, name it whatever you want. At its core, they're Marxists, and this thing cannot exist until you've entered a post-scarcity world. It's just not possible, because otherwise you certainly fail. So while a lot of the fundamental foundational things seem good, like everybody has access and nobody's suffering and blah, 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 all that stuff sounds good or whatever, but it can't exist unless you have an infinite number of resources. And we don't have that. And we're certainly not going to have that if we don't choose to put America first and put us in a position of power economically, defense strategically, war fighting, all this. If we don't put ourselves in that position, you have zero chance of ever being successful in socialism. I don't dispute that if we have infinite resources, socialism could work. But that's just not the case. That's not the reality we live in, and we need to operate within that reality. And like you said, I think it is important that on the right that we stay vigilant of this, because if we have a civil war within the right and we're fighting against one another, socialism will win. It will come through. And as a matter of fact, one of the senators at the hearing today immediately went to blaming Trump. Somehow all of this fraud that has taken place is Trump's fault. And their argument is, well, he pardoned some people that were had committed fraud, and I'm not even sure on the case of those instances. But even if that were the case, what I would say to the left is, if this fraud is taking place on the right as well as the left, I would encourage you to find your Nick Shirley Go out there, pound the pavement, investigate, find that fraud, and expose it. Because I'm anti-fraud, whether it's left or right. We should not be abusing taxpayers' money. That's my money. That's your money, Casey. That's your money out in the audience, Crossfire Republic fans. And they're stealing it from us. So whether it's left or right, I want all that exposed and put an end to it. Where I think you're going to find trouble finding that fraud is a lot of it is being propped up by social programs. And conservatives historically don't want social programs. We want that very minimum. So if it is being propped up by social services, it seems like you're probably going to find more Democrats committing these fraud, waste, and abuse things rather than conservatives.
Yeah, and when you talk about how it's propped up like that through the services, a lot of that is NGOs. And that's why I find it so interesting. We're starting to see now some of the ramifications of what Elon Musk and Doge did when they cut all funding to USAID. And I wonder if a lot of that funding to USAID was going to a lot of the fraudsters, was going to a lot of these fake businesses. And I wonder if they were actually using that money to pay protesters, like how we saw at the very beginning of Trump's second presidency last year. And remember those crazy protests that were going on in California where pallets of bricks were being delivered en masse throughout the city at strategic locations.
Yep.
And water bottles were going out and Craigslist ads to pay people to protest and all those jobs for that. And then it seems like now, since funding has been cut, all the money's ran out. And I don't know if I'm wrong here, but so far this summer seems like the first summer I can remember in my adult lifetime where there hasn't been a riot somewhere across the country. And I wonder if that's tied to USAID. Have you thought about that?
That's a good point, dude. No, I haven't, but I have seen videos pop up. There's this wonderful woman. She must be from Dorchester or something out in Boston. And she's out there at all these protesters documenting where they come in. They're being bussed in. They're like, this is a huge strategic operation, and huge strategic operations must have some sort of funding coming in somewhere. And it's funny that you mentioned the Elon Doge thing, because this is what they were trying to do, was take care of the fraud, waste, and abuse. And what happened? They got attacked. They attacked his businesses. They attacked Tesla.
Big balls.
Say that again.
Big balls. Remember when he got mugged out in DC? He was on the Doge team.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah. And so it makes you wonder if they were like, oh crap, we're about to be exposed. And then, and paying protesters is nothing new. It's a good strategy to get people worked up, right? You can clip all that and fearmonger and do all that through media, which I think is beautiful about these journalists going out there and asking the questions and stuff, because it really exposes that they're really not out there for any reason. Either they're being paid or they're just out there because why? I have nothing better to do. You know what it is? Here's what it is. What it really is this whole victim mentality. And instead of being like focused on a mission and finding purpose and drive and everything for life, they have no purpose to drive. So they feel empty. And when you feel empty, you feel angry, depressed, anxiety, all these sort of things. And this is an outlet for them, just like some people's is drugs and alcohol. This is their outlet to get out there and just like literally scream at the sky. The old man shaking the fist at the sky. Americans need to find their purpose, and we need to push for that more. We need people to find purpose in life and fulfillment. And this is a whole side topic. But the whole thing goes to show that with these protesters, as soon as you know you've lost the debate, when you resort to personal attacks, and I mean that metaphorically as well as physically, right? When you have Doge coming in there and you're trying to stop them physically, you're attacking the facilities and all of that. It just goes to show that like that, your back's up against the wall. All that's left to do is attack. And it's a shame, because it kind of all makes sense since this came out to light, where Doge would have been impactful. And in academia, bro, I see it all the time. All this federal funding going to these ridiculous nonsense research projects that will generate basically zero for all of society, except what it'll allow is for some fake phony PhD to get some stupid published piece so they can get their PhD, their doctoral, and get away with it, because finding real research and real things requires a brain. And most people who are passing through academia, especially in those lib arts majors, are lacking in that category. And so Doge was a good thing to clean it up. And these independent journalists exposing all the fraud. I've kind of derailed here. Pick me up.
Well, I think it's important to recognize where we are, though, right? The Democratic Party and the liberal elites have moved past the point of debate, right? They are resorting to personal attacks, whether that's physically or through speech. And now that they've moved past the point of debate, we need to be aware of that. We need to alter our methods. We need to stop trying to make them like us, okay? They've moved past that point right now. Now we kind of got to focus on what can we do to be the best that we can be. And we need to move forward with that. Fortunately, a lot of conservatives and people on the right don't have the same issues that the liberals in the country have when it comes to like purpose or having meaning. Many of us have that. Now it's our time to go seek it as hard and as fast as we can.
If we want to save America, and this goes beyond, this is such a complex problem. There are so many forces working against America in general to try to basically a revolution's taking place. You said it earlier. This is a full-blown revolution, and it's strategic. And this fraud is just one aspect of it. The open borders is another aspect of it. The voter fraud that's taking place is another aspect of it. The feminization of children through school and through academia institutions is another aspect of it. Media and pushing degenerate behaviors to the population so that it becomes an accepted ideal and value is another aspect of it. These are all the same tactics that they've probably observed throughout human history. This is how you collapse an empire. And they're applying and implementing those strategies to take down America. And conservatives and Republicans and the right need to come together now more than ever, because if not, we will lose our country, and our great grandkids will not even recognize the world we left behind for them. And so this whole hearing has been instrumental in that. And I wish that the Democrats were on board, except like you said, they've pretty much declared at this point, like, fuck America. Who cares about America? And I don't know what to do other than to gain unity in the conservative party so that we're all pulling in the same direction. And go ahead.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. We got to find unity. The good news is that this could be a short-term problem, right? If we start prosecuting the fraudsters, if we're able to find evidence and links between politicians and these fraudulent organizations, that would go a long way. If we can pass the Save America Act and ensure that voting integrity is a real thing in America, that could help solve the problem. But this could be a really short problem. Look, liberals are not having kids. Okay, their fertility rates are absolutely abysmal. They're not even close to replacement. In 10 to 15 years, we could see a supermajority trad conservative America. That's a real possibility to happen in a 10 to 15 year period in our lifetime. Well, no, because there'll be babies by then, but then give it another 18 years after that, right?
Yep.
In our lifetime, basically, we could see that happen. All we got to do is we got to hold off the revolution for the next, 20 years. We just got to hold off the communists for 20 years. And I think if we do that, we will be in a place where America will be just in a much better position than we find ourselves today.
Yeah, and that's the one thing they didn't consider over there on the left socialist world is if you convince everybody that's within your group that the world is terrible, don't have kids, have an abortion, be gay, be trans, be all these things,
career over family,
career over family, career over family. Yeah, even all spectrums, areas of that whole leftist ideology. You're not reproducing. You're going to be outbred by the conservative trads because they are traditionally having much more kids than anybody else. And that would be a plus for America. We need to return back to those values because what we've seen so far, since we've started implementing these sort of values, basically since the gay marriage thing, right, is we've seen a slow decline in the ethics and moral integrity and division within the country itself. It has returned nothing but bad results. And when you just sit back, take an unbiased perspective and say, was the quality of life better now or in the 1980s? It's not even close to a debate.
No, and it's odd, right? We have, especially in our adult lifetime, moved more and more liberal culturally, politically, economically, in every single way. I'm talking about taxes. I'm talking about social programs. Culturally, it's easy to see how our culture has moved to the left, and politically, we've granted more and more rights over the last 30 years. But as we've done all this, we've only gotten more and more division. Racial tensions have never been worse in my entire lifetime than they are today. After 30, the Civil Rights Act was passed almost 60 years ago. You know what I mean? So it's like the more liberal we get as a society, the more divisive we get. It's odd how that works.
It all starts out with let's just think of it logically by nature, right? The whole idea behind this LGBT whatever movement is that, what it is that people want to feel special, right? They want to feel special. And so they create all these subcategories in which they can be considered different than everybody else. And from that, just out of nature, if you, and Jason on our last show pointed this out and was a great observation. There's a gay couple that lives in his community, and they wanted to start an LGBT group of this Facebook community or whatever. And this guy's thinking, he says, we're just members of this community. Why do we need to be sub-members of this community? Why can't we all just be members of this community? And what you do in your bedroom is what you do in your bedroom. Who cares? And the idea behind the whole leftist thing is just categorizing people, putting them in boxes, and from boxes just cause division. And the only box that we should be put in is that we're Americans, baby. That's it. That's the only box that matters. The rest of it is inconsequential.
Yes, but the liberal message, not just the Democratic Party, right? But I'm talking the liberal message going through academia, even primary school, grade school and everything. The liberal message is that America is made up of distinct identity groups, and some of these identity groups are oppressed and are victims, and just one other identity group is an oppressor. They are evil. Their ancestors were evil, horrible people, and they aren't worthy of redemption. So what's come along with this great racial awakening that the left has been looking for, I think has led to more division. It's led to more hostilities, higher tensions. And now my concern is that we're going to see a backlash on this, right? We basically spent the last 40 years telling young white males that you're evil, you're horrible, you have to be aware of everyone else's racial identity, but you're not allowed to be aware of your own. And I'm afraid that we're going to see a serious backlash because of this. And I don't think that's a good thing as well. I think, and that's why I spend a lot of time criticizing the right, because I'm on the right. And when I see them doing the identity politics the same way that the left has, just in reverse, it's just as stupid. It's just the reverse of that. And because there I guess there's more white people, it'll be a more powerful identitarian movement. I still don't think an identitarian movement is good. I think a movement based on values, ethics, shared morals, obligations, duties, and responsibilities is worthy of a movement pushing forward. Copying what the left has done will only lead to the same type of destruction that has already begun in our country.
Right. And you see this already with the emergence of people like Jake Lang taking the streets. And I think, the Proud Boys just had some demonstrations out there. You're going to push these people to the brink where it's like, yo, you keep calling me this. You keep treating me like I'm subhuman and I'm less than everybody else because of things that I didn't even do. People are going to push back on that. And I fear that it could become violent, and people's lives, American lives, can be lost because of that division. And what needs to happen is we need to just stop talking about this shit. Yes. In the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s, we weren't even talking about this, bro. I had plenty of different ethnicities and races on my football team, and this wasn't even a thought. And I grew up in Idaho, some semi-rural Idaho, right? So this is a place where you think like, oh, hillbillies, white, racist people or whatever. And given like the school was majority white, yes, but we did have people of different ethnicities, Hispanics, Black people that were on the football team, and we were all just players on the football team. We didn't talk about race or different, like you go over to the house, you play, the James Bond GoldenEye on the 64 together. You go watch the Monday Night Football together or whatever. And it didn't matter. We're all just people on the same team. And that's how America needs to treat it. We need to quit talking about race. It really isn't important. What's important to me is how you carry yourself. Do you believe in duty and commitment to your country? Do you believe in duty and commitment to your neighbors? Do you believe in duty and commitment to your family? These are the things that are truly important. And if you're falling short of those, regardless of your race, religion, or identity, then you need to be held accountable. And that's fine. But we can also bring light to the people of different ethnicities, ideas, and belief systems that are doing the right things. And we need to convert them onto the conservative side, the traditional side, regardless of race, identity, or any of these other things. We need to unite and save America, quite literally, from this socialist movement that's whole sole mission is to revolutionize America.
Yeah, and not revolutionize it for the better. They want to copy the same things that, the same failures that Stalin had, the same failures that Mao had, except they believe that they're smarter than them. I got into an argument with one of my, with another student in law school with me. And he was talking about how people of hundreds of years ago were so much dumber than us. Like he was trying to tell me that Plato would be an idiot compared to any modern American today. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? The human brain has not changed at all from the times of Moses to the times of today. We operate with the same intellectual capacities that they had then that we have now, except with new technology. So yep. Trying to repeat the playbook that killed over 100 million people in China or led to the death of over 80 million people in Russia, or as we've seen in our lifetime, has severely set back, decayed, degraded, and debilitated Europe, is not a model I want to see here, especially for me and my children.
Yeah, especially our children, bro. We can't allow that. Nothing good has ever taken place from socialism. And you look through human history, and we know that they had the same intellectual capabilities as us, because if you look back thousands of years, they were thinking about physics. They were thinking about astrophysics. They were thinking about chemistry. They were thinking about biology. These are all the same things we're thinking about today. We just have better tools of understanding. Like their brains weren't any different than us. If you planted them here today, you could catch them up and they would understand everything that we currently know about physics or chemistry. It would probably even be like in light bulb moments. They don't understand why you can create all these alloys of metals or whatever, but they were doing it, right? They don't know how
Right.
it's working, but they did. So when you gave them the why behind it, they're probably like, whoa, badass, bro. These people weren't any different than we are today. The human brain has not evolved in 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 years. I don't know how many years.
Yeah,
But
Socrates would run circles around the average American today.
bro, that's the part that made me laugh, dude. Like, you really think like the average IQ, the average American can't even read at a 6th grade level when they graduate high school, and you think if they debate with Socrates, they're gonna fucking cook him? Please, let's get real, bro. Let's live in reality.
The first question Socrates is going to ask is, if your cell phone is your greatest power, then what are you without it?
Mic drop right there. Game over. Game over, bro.
Shout out to Socrates.
Big shout out to Socrates, the man, the myth, the legend. Here at Crossfire Republic, we want to bring back the wisdom of all the great philosophers. We want to bring back 80s strength into America. So if you like our content, do not forget to like, follow, subscribe, help us out. Leave a comment in the comment section who your favorite philosopher is, some of your greatest learnings that you've learned from these philosophers. And yeah, don't forget to spread the word, man. We're doing great things over here at Crossfire Republic.
Yeah, I want to bring up one more thing too. When we talk about racial identitarianism, I want to contrast that with George Washington. So recently I was listening to the Rest is History podcast. It's two British historians, and they were doing a special about America's 250, and they did an episode highlighting George Washington. And George Washington's Continental Army, it was very small. And I didn't know this, but it was made up of, they had over 700 free black men that were slaves that God sent there and earned their freedom upon passing whatever their basic training version of that was at the time. They had entire Prussian regiments where nobody spoke English at all. They had Dutch, where people were not speaking English at all. They had Protestants fighting right next to Catholics who were not allowed to vote and had very little political rights. They had entire groups of just Jewish Americans from South Carolina that were fighting and funding the entire revolution. And during the entire Revolutionary War, and they said this on the podcast, no historian has been able to recall a single instance of racial animus under George Washington's army during the American Revolution. Have you ever heard of any?
No. And honestly, I have never heard of any sort of racial divide during that time, during the revolution or anything. So that's great, interesting facts and points. And it would behoove us to teach more of this into our education system to bring back that pride. And you know what? Maybe white people aren't as evil as we're making them out to be. Maybe they did some pretty awesome things to better society and the world as a whole. So I think that's a Go ahead.
I also think it shows that we are starving for leadership. Like when you think about that specific example that I just laid out there, like let's really think about this. By the time the Revolutionary War happened, France and Germany and Prussia have been fighting against each other a bunch of times. Prussia and England have been fighting each other. France and England have been fighting each other constantly. There was the rival between the Dutch and the Portuguese. And of course, Jews have been hated almost in every country that they've been to except Israel. And so it's like you have all these different subgroups that in their native lands are always fighting with each other. But under the leadership of George Washington, one great man, he was able to elevate everybody's character so that they could supersede what the standard is and reach a level of success that was unprecedented in human history. Being a tiny continental army with very few resources, like these soldiers didn't even have boots. They were marching so much into Valley Forge, and I believe it was January at the time, freezing temperatures, snow everywhere, no boots on, no food at all, running out of ammo, and because of that great leadership, he was able to elevate everybody else's character so that they could achieve the impossible against the world's biggest army, the world's biggest military. They said the sun never set on the British Empire at the time. Like, that's what we went up against, and we overcome amazing odds because of that great leadership. America today is starving for leadership, and the Crossfire audience needs to go out there and be those leaders that America needs right now, that your community is starving for. This is our moment. So when we talk about personal responsibility, accountability, this is what we're talking about. It's time for like everybody to grab the bull by the horns, step up, and be that leader that we need.
Let's go, baby. I'm ready to run through a wall. Everybody, you heard it. That's a call to action. We need all of these great leaders. And we know if you're listening to Crossfire Republic, you're one of those people. Get out there, lead, be the example. Get rid of this victim mentality. Find your people and grow them into leaders too, bro. The only way that this is making a movement is if we work together, and those of us who see that leadership go out there and spread that leadership to others so that they can be leaders. And we need to return that leadership back to America, because what George Washington was able to accomplish is historic. It's unprecedented. It's tremendous. Like, that's the part of America that is being left out in these schools. And if we all heard these stories and knew these stories and what our ancestors went through to make the greatest nation that's ever existed possible, we'd have a little bit more pride and a little bit more duty and commitment to that nation. We need to bring that back. And that's a tremendous point, bro. Really great.
Yeah, that's part of my concern with the rebound from the right, against this identitarian movement, where now we're seeing lots of white identitarianism. And, they've been told for the last 40 years that white people are horrible. They never did anything good. So now they're coming back and saying, well, no, white people have done everything. White people built this country. And, the truth of the matter is that a lot of white people did build this country. A lot of foundational Black people built this country as well. A lot of immigrants built this country as well. A lot of people contributed. And to those that contributed positively, those are the heroes, and they're awesome regardless of what their race was. We shouldn't be excluding anybody who showed great values over their lifetime in service to their communities in this country. And we should also include the people that did that as well.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good point, dude, because a lot of times it's just back and forth combating with one another, when in reality, maybe people just wanted a little recognition and say for their contributions to the country. And that's fair. That's understandable. If you contributed and it's being neglected to be mentioned, then of course it should be added in, and we should appreciate it, because you're right. They are heroes. Everybody who contributed, whether white, brown, Black, Asian, or anything in between, they should be recognized for those contributions. And maybe had we given a little more recognition, we wouldn't be in the position we're in today. The problem comes when, because certain people weren't getting recognition for their contributions, we've now shifted the entire far way, where it's now they're acting as if they're the only reason that this country exists. And that's just simply not the facts, right? It's just simply not true. And so I think that that's a fair point, dude. We should recognize everybody who helped contribute, white, brown, Black, and everything in between. And the minute we stop with this identity crisis that's going on, is the minute we can go back to just judging people off of merit and value rather than their skin color, which is what Martin Luther King Jr. wanted, right? And be judged by the content of the character, not the color of the skin. We need to return to that. The only way to return to that is if we stop talking about it. Let's stop pretending like there's odds up against us. Let's stop playing victim. Let's grab our nuts. Let's say this situation sucks. Now, how do I get out of it? And then go out there and execute it and get yourself out of it. That's what needs to happen. Get rid of that victim mentality. It does nobody good. Nobody, not you, not everybody around you, the nation, nothing. It does nobody good. We need to get rid of that victim mentality, and a lot of our problems will start to alleviate themselves.
I think there's also a huge part of the reason why we got into this problem is because there is a huge problem with identity and a lack of identity in this country as well, right? We have problems where some people's identity is solely based on immutable characteristics that they could not change, like the levels of melanin in their skin, whether they have a lot or don't have any, like me. But that's an issue to me. That's something that nobody chooses. You're born into. We have other groups of people that want to make their identity whatever their sexual kink is, which is, I think, extremely debaucherous and strange. What I would suggest that we need to move culturally is that people do have a solid, I guess, understanding of what their identity is based on values and ethics of their choosing. And this is why you don't have identity issues with religious groups of people, religious people like ourselves, right? I know what my identity is because it stems all the way back from the book of Genesis. I understand the whole timeline of what led me here and where I am supposed to be going. I know what my identity is. I'm the spirit of Joshua. I understand that. Those were my ancestors. That's where we're going. But people who are not religious tend to choose their identity based on immutable characteristics that they had no choice in making. Like I choose to wake up every day and believe in God. I choose every day to read the Bible. I choose to pray. I choose to live by those biblical values and ethics. Those are not immutable characteristics. It's a choice. And that's why I feel like people are lacking an identity nowadays, and they're grabbing on to some of the flimsiest, I guess, things that lack the most meaning.
Yeah, dude. And the whole, most people have said, and I can't quote anybody, but that the whole socialist Marxist thing, this is a replacement for that God component. Instead of having that God component, they turn and fill that God-shaped hole. Dennis, shout out Dennis Reynolds. He's going to try to fill his God-shaped hole with power and puss. But no, I think that people, because whether they choose to believe it or not, right? We were all created by the superior being. And because we're all created of that peace exists within us, right? The word of God is written on our hearts. And if we choose not to accept and acknowledge that, we're going to try to find replacements for that. And I don't think that there's any replacement that is ethically sound and morally good as there is the Bible, right? And right. So if you're hanging on to all these debaucherous type identities and beliefs in exchange and to fill that hole, you're never going to feel satisfied, because that's not what God wants you to fill that hole with. He wants you to fill that hole with Him, with spirituality, with yourself and inner identity with God. And if you keep trying to stick the circle through the square hole on that thing, you're never going to be satisfied. And I think that it's no surprise that as religious identity in the United States of America decreases, so does the debauchery increase. And I think that there's no surprise that those two are inversely proportionate to one another.
Yeah, and it also seems like there's a healthy dose of radicalism in our country, more so on the left than on the right. But the radicalism just on campus is insane from the left, and that's what I've witnessed being in college for 7 years. So I wonder if in the past this type of radicalism was controlled through strong institutions like churches and stuff. And a focus on religion.
Yeah. And so you're saying that power dynamic has now shifted towards, like, say, academia as an institution. And now that they're kind of instilling and enforcing their beliefs in morality, this has led to the degeneracy, because for all intents and purpose, the church Christian churches here in America have let go of the reins on that. They capitulate far too often. They allow themselves to be demonized and made fun of and mocked constantly. And you know, that's something where the Islamic religion is a strong point. Is they won't allow for their belief system, for their identity, for their religion to be mocked and demonized like the Christians do. And I think that is a detriment to American society, because those ethical systems, ethical structures are the foundation of God's word. And this is how you govern a people successfully, as if you abide by these laws and structures. The minute you start saying, well, because we live in 2026 and not in the 6th century, I guess we should let these things slide. That was not the purpose of it. The purpose was, this is what's good, this is what's bad, and don't deviate from that. If you deviate from that, you'll end up like Sodom and Gomorrah. You'll collapse, you'll fail. You'll end up like the Roman Empire. You'll collapse, you'll fail.
Yeah, and you know, even myself, like I'm not sitting here trying to paint the picture that you know, I'm superior to any other American or anything. And I've gone through evolutions as well as I've grown and aged and everything. And like, you know, just for example, when the Book of Mormon came out and the South Park episodes making fun of all the Mormons came out, I was watching them, I was laughing, I thought it was hilarious. But now that I'm older, I look back on that time period and I think it's extremely cringe. Like, I'm not a Mormon myself at all, but this is just another Christian group out there that does a lot of great things and has a great reputation in the state of Utah and globally for the missions that they conduct, helping people around the world. And like, as Americans, we were all sitting back and just roasting these people and making fun of them for what? For like doing a lot of good, bringing a lot of value, you know, not having high divorce rates, having lots of children that pay their taxes and go and get jobs, and you know, are innovators in society, you know, business owners, you know, who live in communities where you don't have to lock your door, or you don't have to, you could leave some in your car without worrying about your window getting smashed. Like, it's just kind of crazy now that I'm older and I look back on that time period and stuff, and like how America culturally reacted. And I was a part of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we've all been on the bad side of things and the good side of things, right? But I think like acknowledging and owning that and saying, yeah, it was funny at the time, but maybe it wasn't as funny as I thought it was, because, you know, and I grew up like Idaho is, yeah, BYU has a section there, BYU Idaho. I grew up around tons and tons of Mormons, and I never came across, like, they would always invite me over for dinner and all these things, because they knew like my circumstances weren't the greatest growing up as a kid, right? I was in poverty, and they seen that, and all they ever tried to do is extend a handout to me. As a matter of fact, my best childhood friend, Chris Rigby, shout out Chris Rigby, love you, buddy. You're doing great things, and he's super successful. He's working in an embassy, I think somewhere in Africa or something, and the family has done tremendous, but his mom kind of looked after me. And, you know, hockey's an expensive sport, and that was the thing I loved most out of everything. And she would help contribute to help make sure that I could play the sport that I loved as a child. She took me out to tournaments in Utah, and these people are tremendous people. I've never met a Mormon who was like, you know, like, I just never met one who was bad or mean or evil. Like, they were all upstanding people. And I'm sure that there are exceptions, right? There's probably people out there. But for the majority, these are people, like you said, having lots of children is what we need to be doing as Americans, right? We need to have lots of children so we can replenish our workforce, so they can go out there, be contributing members of our society, contribute to the job force, pay taxes, contribute to all that stuff. And they're doing this. Yet, we allowed them as a society to be demonized and mocked on one of the greatest cartoons that were in the business of ridiculing and mocking many, many different beliefs, ideologies, religions, all that stuff. They're very well known for it, and they're still doing it to this day. And I think that Christians in general, and the way I look at Christians is anybody who believes that Jesus Christ died for our sins or whatever. So that whole umbrella covers lots of different denominations. But I think all of those religious organizations should step up and be like, this is unacceptable. We are good people. We do lots of good for our community, and we won't allow for people to tarnish our reputation and what we represent as an organization. And on the other hand, step up in your communities, right? Start instilling those values that we once hold dear in this nation. What, 9 out of 13 of the original states had had a state religion, right? So religion has been a huge part of the United States of America since its beginning, right? And so that identity is being attacked and demonized, and they shouldn't stand for it. And on the other hand, stand for what is right. Don't subjugate because it means more money or revenue for your churches. Stand by what is right and what is morally ethical, right? We need to stick to those values and not deviate away from them.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. We gotta, as a country, we need to return to the Bible in so many ways. But we are seeing it, right? Gen Z, we're seeing with Gen Z higher rates of religious affiliation than we see with millennials. So it's a step in the right direction. I think this is kind of like a human nature self-correcting mechanism, and we're starting to see the fruits of that. Also, religious people, no matter what religion you are, whether you're Muslim, Christian, or Jewish, they have more kids at a much higher rate than non-religious affiliated families, and that's going to lead to a future where there is more people in America who are basing their life off of the Judeo-Christian foundational values. And that's really what we need to remember is our country doesn't work without those Judeo-Christian values. The founding fathers, some people like to overemphasize and act like the majority of them were deists. Even if they were deists, they were brought up in that Judeo-Christian framing of their history, their culture of that time period. But the data shows that the overwhelming majority of them were Christians. They were very fundamentally religious. And our country doesn't really operate under the Constitution unless we are, as John Adams said, a moral and religious people.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to remember while you were talking about this it was John Adams. He said the system is only designed for those that are religious and moral, right? So right. Without it, it will fail. And if we're not careful and the right doesn't come together and start pulling in the same direction, we're going to see exactly what John Adams meant by that. Because he's absolutely right. Like, degeneracy in this country is out of control. We're promoting promiscuity through OnlyFans and making it normalized. The corn industry is out of control. There's no restrictions. Kids can access it easily. And we're promoting, go out, this whole feminist thing, go out and find yourself and just sleep with a bunch of dudes. And somehow that's going to lead you to find yourself and be fulfilled. Like all these delusional narratives that only cause detriment to our nation are being pushed. And we need to go back to being a religious and ethical country so that we can restore the sanity in this country. Otherwise, like the left will win and we'll be just like Cuba in 50 years or something. I don't know.
Yeah, right. And I've been to Cuba, plagued by poverty and corruption, with no social mobility at all. Not a place I want to live in.
Yeah, me neither, bro. I like America. I like our republic. This is the greatest nation that's ever existed in human history. Let's beat Rome, baby. We're 1/4 of the way there. Let's finish it off. Let's make 1,000 years and let's go down in history as the greatest civilization to ever exist. So I think that's important. We've kind of skirted way off topic here, but there's a lot of great conversation involving this. And I think it all ties one to another. Like, that's the crazy thing. All of these political issues that we're facing, they're all tied to the same thing. And that thing is to have a revolution in America, overthrow it, and turn it into some socialist shithole that nobody wants to live in. Pretty soon, everybody's gonna be fleeing. But guess what? There's no places left to flee to. So if America goes down, what's next? All right, where do our immigrants who are fleeing an oppressive regime? Where do we get to escape to? Europe will fall before America, and when America falls, what's left? China ain't taking us in. Where you want to go live? Russia? Saudi Arabia? I don't know, man. I like America. We need to keep this puppy around.
Yeah, I like Japan a lot, but they're basically an ethno state. They're not going to take in a bunch of foreigners as much as I love them.
Yeah, and which is probably the right move, right? Because then you end up in a position like America where there's not assimilation happening, and I mean, it's a whole thing, and that's what this whole congressional hearing was about. And I think it at least opened eyes. Like, I don't know how people can deny it's happening any longer. Like, you have to accept that it's happening and either own it and say, yeah, we're doing this, or disown it. Say, oh, this is happening and it's not right, and we need to fix this. Fix it. Those are the only two outcomes. Like, it is happening. This is real. This is a real thing that's happening. You have to accept that and then make a decision with your worldview. Do you want to say, I support this? I think the collapse of American society and turning it into a socialist communist country is worth that. Or you say, okay, we need to buckle down a little bit here and change the momentum, because that's where we're headed. But first, you have to accept that this is really happening, because it is, right? And we know it's happening because of the response from the other side, right? That's
the mask is off.
The mask is off, baby. The mask is off, baby. The Scooby-Doo mask is off. We boiled it down to its finest element. What's at the other end there? Marxism, baby. Pull that mask off. It's always Marxism. But there was some other interesting things. I think. Was there anything else you wanted to mention in terms of that congressional hearing? I think
that's all I got on the congressional hearing.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's scoot over to something a little bit different, I guess, which is the passing of Senator Lindsay Graham.
Yeah, and I think this ties in a lot to what we've already talked about, in the sense that I found it really interesting, the reactions and what was trending when Senator Graham died. So just for context right here, Senator Graham, congressman over 30 years, served in the military over 30 years on active duty and reserved, both the Army and Air Force. I believe he retired at the rank of colonel. I don't know if he ever saw combat like we did or anything. But what I do know is that he was a Republican, and the reactions to his death from the left were expected. These are the same people that made Halloween costumes of Charlie Kirk dying shortly after his death, and that were out dancing in the streets celebrating it. So I kind of expect that type of behavior from them. It doesn't surprise me. What surprised me was all the negative, I guess, remarks and reactions that were trending on Twitter from the conservatives. And I think this is yet another dangerous example where the America First people on the right have aligned themselves with the communists. What is their exact beef and hatred of Lindsey Graham and making some of those hateful remarks off of his death? The biggest criticisms that I saw on there were people called him a boomer con, or that he was a war hawk, or that he wanted the Iran war and he was comfortable with Iraq and Afghanistan. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Cucho?
I think you nailed it. Which the biggest takeaway is the response from the right? Like the left is going to do what the left does. Is it in poor taste? Yes, I would say so. But we do have the freedom of speech, right?
Right.
I'm not going to demonize someone for thinking something's funny that I don't think's funny, in the same way that they shouldn't demonize something that I think's funny today's funny. I don't think it's a good look. And but the left's going to do what the left does. But again, this is a missed opportunity for conservatives to rally around a tragic incident and show solidarity in the fact that you guys are all on the same team. This man was on your team, and he passed away. This is the tragedy of life, right? He was respected in the Congress. He's done his part to help our nation, and he served the nation. And to be treated and mocked upon his death is just in poor taste, and it shouldn't happen on the right. We should all be rallying together because this is a battle against the communists, bro. We're talking Rocky versus Ivan Drago, baby.
Yes.
Right? This is it.
In our own country.
In our own country. Red Dawn meets Rocky 4, all right? And we need to come together because they are making progress. They're making tremendous progress in our nation. And we have to come together in solidarity. And these moments of tragedy in human history, these are when we usually bond together. And I'm not saying that this is like some crazy tragedy or something, but it is a tragedy. And in a tragedy situation, you should rally behind it and unify and come together. And I think they failed to do that. And it's disappointing at a bare minimum.
Yeah, well, it's just another example of them allying themselves with the communists, right? They did it on Epstein. They did it on Israel. They did it on the Iran war. They did, when I talk about Israel, I'm talking about with the October 7th in Gaza and cheering for Hamas, right? So they allied themselves then. And then again, later in the Iran war that we've been doing in conjunction with Israel. So they're aligning themselves with the communists time and time again on all of these issues. And it's like they don't understand that these people are going to take you out too, just along the way. They have no love, no respect, no tolerance for you. And we're seeing it from a lot of mainstream, Republicans. Like, for example, Megyn Kelly is telling her audience that they need to ally with the left and with Democrats and, Anna Kasparian, the Young Turks, radical communists. Tucker Carlson started his own is trying to start his own third party, and he wants to, that guy's gone off the deep edge here. Completely divorced from reality. Talk a man that's been given everything in life on a silver spoon and never had paid back any duty or responsibility to the country, yet criticizes everybody else. So we're seeing this division right here on the right, and it's interesting that the division has one side always allying themselves with the communists.
And it comes down to who do you guys want to be, right? Do you guys want to be a part of the Communist Party, or do you want to team up with the conservatives and maybe open up and broaden your ideas? Because the other thing is, like, the things that they push up against, I just don't understand. The Epstein, you mentioned the Epstein thing, right? Like, this is a terrible thing that has happened, and they wanted to put all the blame onto Trump and push away and blame Trump for all this sort of things. It's like, where was all this when, Biden had the files and wasn't releasing these files? I didn't seem to see anybody saying that Joe Biden was trying to cover up activities or anything by not releasing them. Presumably, they both had the same power to release the things. And if old Donnie Trump was going to be found guilty of this sort of things, why wouldn't they have released it in the first place to kill his presidential run? And it just wasn't there. And then the Israel thing, like, again, and I'm going to talk on this every single time, like, there's Europe, there's America, and then there's Israel, right? We all share the same ideological beliefs on how to govern a people. We are the minority globally on this planet. The rest of the nations out there do not share the same ideologies on how to execute a government of the people. We need to protect that ideology and all the people that hold that ideology, and Israel is one of them, right? They are surrounded by 57 nations that are enemy nations that want to see them eradicated from the face of this planet. They are one nation. The Jews only have one nation on this entire globe in which they can govern their people according to their moral and ethical standard. One, right? And they are surrounded. And we need to help them. We need to protect them. And I don't understand the pushback on this. If in my opinion, Europe is all but fallen. That they're going to go through whatever happens post this whole immigration dilemma, the woke movement, all of that. I don't think it's going to end pretty. And I think that they're going to suffer as nations from this. And of course, there's people that won't, right? Poland has done very good on handling their immigration policies, for example. But for the majority, Europe is all but fallen. That leaves only America, Israel, and a select few nations that don't really have the military support that, say, America does to defend against these ideologies that want to collapse the American and Western ideology and way of life. And I don't understand why people would be opposed to this. It makes no sense to me. The propaganda train, maybe. I don't understand the conservative pushback, the America First pushback against helping to defend Israel, which has huge strategic implications in not only economy, but in war fighting and all these other things, right? And so it's in America's best interest to ensure the protection of Israel.
Well, I think what's interesting about Israel is that it is uniquely, the modern state of Israel is uniquely a product of the post-Enlightenment period. So it's a country that's based on Western tradition, Western Enlightenment, Western European Enlightenment philosophy. I think it's important to keep that. Great Britain has lost that Western philosophy, or is in the process of losing it. France is in the process of losing it. Germany didn't have Western philosophy as much, but we can see what's going on with their country. So when I say we need to support Israel, I'm not saying that any Americans need to go to die for Israel. I think you can have healthy debates on economic aid that we give to Israel. I think you can have healthy debates about our economic alliances or our military alliances. But at the same time, you can have those debates about England. I have things that I don't like about NATO. I would like to, as a matter of fact, I think we should pull out of NATO. I think we should have independent deals with Germany because we have bases there. But I don't know why me and my, country's on the hook for Montenegro, when most Americans don't even know where Montenegro exists. So I think it's totally cool to have healthy debates about costs and benefits on our relationship with Israel. But the way I see it is I treat Israel just like I treat Great Britain. I'm not rooting for Great Britain to fail. Okay. I'm not rooting for the immigration invasion that they have, for them to have a revolution and overthrow the Western philosophy of Great Britain. I'm not rooting for Germany to fail. I'm not rooting for Poland to fail. The difference is those that are aligning themselves with the communists are rooting for Israel to fail. They're rooting for Western tradition, Western philosophy to fail. And that's a huge difference. One other thing, and I know I'm rambling here, but one other thing. When it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, I feel like that was the greatest psyop perpetrated in my entire lifetime. And what do I mean by that? That the amount of allegations, rumors, conspiracies that were circulating through the American public for a period, of over 15 years. And so much of it turned out to be false, but yet the American public is convinced, right? We were told, and this is even on South Park episodes, we were told that at Epstein Island, there was tens of thousands of children that were being, I don't even know if I can say this, but trafficked through the island, and horrible things happened to them. Now that the reports have came out, no such thing happened. There's no evidence of that at all, other than baseless assertions from QAnon and on Twitter and on the Reddit posts, right? But no hard evidence of that has ever been produced, yet everybody knows about it. Like, come on, how is that so deep in the American psyche? They said that Jeffrey Epstein, and JD Vance said that on Joe Rogan the other day, that Jeffrey Epstein was a CIA asset. Well, where is the proof of that? Is there literally any records besides a bunch of weirdos on Twitter that don't have a job and don't touch the grass are saying so? They said Jeffrey Epstein was Mossad. Oh, because he was Jewish? What other evidence besides that do you have of this? Right? And everybody's making such a big deal about Jeffrey Epstein and the supposed Pizzagate scandal where there was kids underneath a basement. And by the way, there was no basement at that pizza restaurant at all. It was just a concrete foundation. And so everybody's all caught up in the thousands of children and thousands of children's. And yet I know in my closest city of Pittsfield, a city of 30,000 people, it's just one case after, and this is all public record, one case after another of what they were accusing of going on at Epstein Island actually happening in the cities near me. Look at Springfield, Mass, Worcester, Mass. Like it's not even comparable what could have happened on that island with a weekend in Worcester, Massachusetts. And that's what's got me upset. Everyone's looking to blame this giant cabal, these these conspirators, they call them the elites that are pulling the strings and everything, and talking about the 1% that are ruining America, when no, it's really the 1% in Worcester. It's the 1% in Springfield. It's the 1% in Boston, the 1% in Pittsfield, the 1% of Albany that is actually perpetrating these crimes on a daily basis.
And where is the outrage for that, bro?
There's none.
There's none. Not one piece of outrage. They want some grand bow on it, grand conspiracy, when in reality these things are being carried out and we should be pissed about them. But let's look to where we have evidence of this going on and let's put a fucking end to it. Let's live in reality. And again, I've mentioned this before on one of the other episodes, but if you believe that there's just this secret entity, the Illuminati or whatever. I don't know if we could say that on TOS. Is that Illuminati's going to cancel us? If we get canceled here at Crossfire Republic, you heard it first. I am not.
The Illuminati did
it. But if you live in the world where there's these people that are controlling everything, you are never going to find out about the Epstein thing, and it's unprovable. The claims that they make under these grand conspiracy claims, the only way that they can be disproven is if they are proven. There's actually no way that they can be disproven. And if you want to live in that world, why do you even get up in the morning? Why do you even do anything? You have no control. You're not in control of anything. You might as well just pack up, move out into the woods.
Well, it's a very anti-Western approach to things, right? The Western philosophical model is in large part based around the idea that you will have the scientific method working, or you have access to the scientific method. But when you have an unprovable hypothesis that you start off with, that's fundamentally not scientific in any way.
Yep, 100%, bro. So we need to move past that, live in reality. We need to crack down on the trafficking that is actually happening in the United States to this day. And lots of these children are children being trafficked across the southern border, right? That are being put into these sort of situations. We need to crack down on that. We need to get these, whether illegal or not, if they're legal citizens, they need to be thrown in prison. If they're illegal, we need to get them out of our country. They're doing no good. We need to take care of those kids who are being victimized in this whole complex of child trafficking. That's what we really need to be fixated on. And nothing ever came. The heat of the movement of the Epstein thing just kind of faded out and gone away. And it really was basically a psyop. And it felt like, and in the midst of it, in the heat of it, when they were getting ready to release all this stuff, it felt very anti-Semitic in nature. It felt like it was just because last name Epstein, that all of a sudden this was an Israel plant who was here to blackmail all the politicians and control.
Remember they said. Yeah, remember what was going around Twitter at the time, and so I'm saying this is in the psyche of America culturally. This is in the consciousness, is that we were told that there was videos that they were taking presidents and blackmailing them, putting them in compromising positions with children, that these elite people wanted to be with the children. That's not what came out in the evidence. What came out there was two 16-year-old girls that were paid to be there, that went there voluntarily, that were doing massages, probably doing some stuff that was illegal, yes. But there's a huge difference between that and thousands of prepubescent children, which we were told for sure happened. And we were told that there was videos and all this. What came out in the evidence? It was Bill Gates and a bunch of people like that looking for Russian prostitutes, not children. They were just being creeps and weirdos and bad people, immoral people. But it was not what we were led to believe.
Absolutely. It was definitely not what it was propped up to be at all in any way, shape, or form. And again, like you said, like those instances are unethical and bad or whatever, but it's not like they're kidnapping children and taking them over and doing this whole drinking of the blood and adrenochrome and whatever, all the other shit that was all over South Park. I didn't see any evidence of that. And we need to get back to reality in America. Like we need to get back to living grounded. And I honestly, dude, I think the COVID thing really exacerbated this whole conspiracy theorist movement. Listen, when we were deployed to Afghanistan, we watched our boy Jesse Ventura go out there and uncover all the crazy conspiracies. I'm Jesse Ventura, and I used to be a Navy SEAL.
I live in Tijuana, the Baja, eating Takis.
And so there were cases of this, like people like that around or whatever, but it really has become mainstream to believe in conspiracies on the grand scale. And I think that COVID kind of exacerbated that. And why do I think that? Because people were trapped. They weren't able to go out to their sporting events, to the local pub on the weekends, to all these places. They were trapped. And when you're trapped and you're being fear-mongered and birth of the social media being put all these conspiratorial things out there, it's another psyop to try to get you to think crazily. And I think that is carried on post-COVID. And a lot of the things are propped up, right? Like, it gave a lot of credibility to conspiracies, all the stuff with Fauci and the effectiveness of the vaccine, TOS, the effectiveness of the COVID. I don't even know if I can say that. Sorry, we're on YouTube. I don't know what we can and cannot say in terms of that. I know that other podcasts are careful when they talk about that stuff, but that whole period during 2020 and whatever kind of gave legs to conspiracies because we did see the government lie.
Yeah, well, there were multiple conspiracies happening on that time. Like, remember, they told us that you were racist if you said that the virus leaked from the Wuhan lab that created COVID or did that tech. Worked on that virus there. So they called you racist for that. They told us it was only going to be 2 weeks to stop the spread, and they kept kids out of school for over a year. They said that children were going to die and didn't let children go to school at all, when it turns out that they were the safest of any demographic group. And we've seen the results of not having the kids in school. You know, they told us that if you took the relief that was offered for COVID by the big pharma companies, that there would be no chance of you even catching COVID. And then that turned out to be false through Omicron. They told us that Dr. Fauci never had any U.S. government funding in the design or invention of the COVID-19 virus. That turned out to be a lie. So there was a ton of conspiracies that have happened just in our lifetime alone, right? But at the same time, there's a difference between a conspiracy and a theory of conspiracy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you've mentioned it once before, and I thought it was a brilliant analogy, or not analogy, but a brilliant representation of this, because a theory of conspiracy is something that there was a conspiratorial design happening, and conspiracy, right? You're conspiring to commit something or whatever, and the theory of that conspiracy can be proven. However, a conspiracy theory is something that you came up with that holds no volition or any sort of provable evidence.
Yeah, generally it's an unprovable hypothesis.
Unprovable hypothesis, yeah. And I think that's a great example. And that helped to strengthen the belief that everything's a conspiracy, I think, in my opinion. And it's getting worse. Like the Epstein thing really set a fire, heard the craziest shit. And after a while, I'm starting to think, like, just being bombarded with this stuff, I'm like, shit, maybe they're right, bro. Maybe like,
I'm very passionate about the Epstein stuff, because I was one of those people that were like looking at like what QAnon has. I couldn't believe it. And at the time, I was really learning about all this stuff while COVID was going on. And I was upset. I was angry. I carried an emotional weight with me thinking about all the children and about how I wasn't doing anything to help it. And I couldn't believe that was going on. And it was horrible. And then it all turned out that they were just trying to manipulate a ton of people who actually care about children in this world. I mean, it is true. We live in a day and age where the liberals have control of the institutions, and they are effectively anti-children at every rate. Right? They're very pro-abortion. They tell women, don't get married till you're in your 30s. But when women hit their 30s, they don't have the same reproductive availability and ability that they had in their early 20s. Right? And
or then value.
Or yeah. Or like they're calling the cops on kids for letting their kids play at the park unsupervised. Right? It has become a fundamentally anti-child society, and I see that around. So when some people come in saying that there's this, giant ring of trafficking going on for children, I'm like, holy crap. And I fell for it. That's why I'm so upset about the Epstein stuff. When the information came out and it was 2 16-year-old girls that volunteered to be there. And I'm not saying it's right, but it's a completely different situation than thousands of children being stolen, ripped from their families, and just sent off to do God knows what.
Getting back to the root of our conversation, this whole thing kind of tore apart the Republican Party, because all of a sudden,
right,
you now had a sect of the Republican Party that was aligning with the communists on the left.
For example, Thomas Massey, who signed off on the bill with Ro Khanna, one of the communist Democrats. And they were working together, just trying to disparage Trump the entire time, and take away momentum from the positive agenda and positive successes that we were making at the time. Like, for example, I'm just going to say one. And in my opinion, if this was the only thing Trump did, then he dominated for his 4 years. And that was ending funding to USAID.
Yep. Yeah. And it's come out like all sorts of that money that was like, I think there was funding going towards like the trans movement in Africa or something. There was all sorts of money that was being wasted that isn't bettering the people that we're helping them out with. And it's definitely not a good use of our tax money that we give up our time, our labor for money, for taxes. A certain piece of that time that we'll never get back is taken from us as workers and given to these programs. And these programs are then divvying out all of our money to all these asinine funding opportunities that benefit nobody, including not our country. And that's just a waste. We absolutely needed to get rid of all that sort of nonsense that isn't really helping our country. Like, look, if our country is like just on top of the world and we're kicking ass and there's no problems and everything's going terrific, and we want to help out other nations or whatever through USAID or whatever, then I can understand that. But the fact of the matter is that our country is not in a good position. It's not in a good state right now. And we need to put America first. And getting rid of all the fraud, waste, and abuse that happens with our tax money is important to do.
You know, I wouldn't have a problem with so much of our aid funding that we give globally if the people we were giving the money to were kind, respectful, appreciative, actually liked us for giving them money and making their lives better. And I know we're going to bring up Mexico a little bit later, but talk about a country that's name another country that's benefited from America more than Mexico, right? With all of the billions of aid that we've given them over the years, the billions worth of jobs that we've shipped down there through Ford, John Deere, GM, all other types of manufacturing. They benefited from NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Mm-hmm. And not to mention all the illegal immigrants from them that we've let come here and then make their money and send it back home as remittances, right? And we get no respect from the Mexican government. We get no respect, I feel like, from the Mexican people. Not to say that they hate us or anything, but there's not a same level of admiration that we get like when you meet an Israeli, right? Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, you were in the military like me. We've met lots of IDF soldiers, always gracious and complimentary towards an American, treat us right. Or like the Japanese people, when we're over in Japan and stuff, kind, gracious. Or how the Germans were to us. Remember when we were in Frankfurt?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, kind.
They bought us beers while we were laid over there, didn't they? If I remember right.
And I remember that they had these sausages that were so friggin' good. But that's sorry
Besides
for
the point.
Yeah, sorry for the digression.
But the point is that they were kind and respected us, and there's no problem helping out those that have some sort of compassion and tie to America. But when it's like a homeless guy, you go to work every day, you pass the homeless guy, you give him $1 every day, $5 every day or whatever. And then one day you don't give him $5 and he goes, well, where the hell's my $5 at or whatever? You know what I mean? It's like,
right.
Hold on, bro. I'm going out of my way, helping you out, being kind and courteous. And you're going to treat me like that? That's bro, and we should not give any aid or support to people who want to treat us like that.
Yeah, like this is just a personal grudge that I have because I'm a millennial and I remember 9/11. But why are we giving Pakistan any aid at all when they aided and supported and housed bin Laden for 20 years? Or they aided and supported and were complicit with the Taliban entering back and forth from Pakistan to Afghanistan, where they would live in the wintertime and then come back to fight us during the fighting season. Like, why are we giving those people any money at all? They hate us, clearly. Why? And it's the same thing. Why are people on the right allying with communists? Why is our government allying with Pakistanis? It's preposterous.
Preposterous is exactly the word. And the thing is that not only are we funding these, but that money that we're funding them is going back towards taking out Americans. Like you speak about bin Laden, right? He strategically executed 2,998 American citizens on September 11th, and not to mention I think Panjwai was down by the Pakistani border. They would cross over to go on off season during the wintertime to train and resupply, do all that, and then come back in the fighting season. They literally, by funding them, America is half responsible for our brothers who died in combat. Right? Money that comes back to there, it's reasonable to assume that money went back into the fighting force to fight America when we were present in Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's so true. It really is, and it goes back to it's really frustrating to see. Like, I get why we give so much aid too. It makes sense. It boosts up the petrodollar. It makes sure that there's a global demand for the U.S. dollar, which means that we don't have the same inflation that a country like Japan or Germany or England has. Right.
Right.
So I get that it's a good thing. I just wish we could pick our allies a little bit better. And me, the bare minimum is you just got to like us. Like, that's the bare minimum.
That's not a lot to ask, man. Well, we talked a little bit about Mexico. Maybe we should jump right into that. Since we're here, and then we'll just talk about the Iran war update to close it up, because I think this whole thing that's going on in Mexico is super fascinating. But first, I need to refill my water. Give me 1 second.
Hey, can you hear me, bro?
Yeah, you got me.
I got you. I had to grab a bucked up. Bucked up. If you're out there, we're looking for sponsors, and I would totally co-sign on your product.
Let's go. Bucked up, baby. We're looking for money. Let's go. All right. Well, before we jump into the Mexico thing, Casey, I think we should watch the Mexican president. What's her name? Claudia
Sheinbaum.
Sheinbaum. That's right. Claudia Sheinbaum, in her comments about what's currently happening here in the United States in terms of the immigrants. All right, so we're going to go ahead and play this video, and then we'll react to it afterwards. All right, I hope this is...
Expresamos nuestra profunda solidaridad y sinceras condolencias a las familias de las víctimas. Su dolor es compartido por toda la nación. Ningún connacional en el exterior debe quedar en el desamparo ni desprotegido frente a posibles abusos de autoridad, uso desproporcionado de la fuerza o violaciones a sus derechos humanos. Es que en la defensa de las y los mexicanos en el exterior y la violación de los derechos humanos de nuestros hermanos migrantes, cualquier mexicana o mexicano y miembro más de un partido político debe estar en contra y debe llamar la atención para que no siga esta situación. Más después de que 17 mexicanos han fallecido, o en centros de detención o en operativos de ICE.
Okay, so that is her comments, bro.
And for those who might be listening on the podcast and not viewing the video, basically Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, has gives a speech in which she's criticizing the United States because there have been alleged 27 Mexican illegal immigrants have died while in ICE custody.
Yeah, and she's basically, here's the thing that gets me most out of this is she says the Mexican government stands in solidarity, but what I'm thinking to myself is, like, if you cared so much about these people, why are they fleeing your country under your leadership to come to America in the first place and risk that? They're accepting that risk the minute they step foot illegally into our country. And you want to cry wolf and America's bad over here, but ask yourself, why are they coming here in the first place? What are you doing and failing as a leader of your nation that is causing your people to flee to America? I think it's
en masse.
En masse. I think it's a bit disingenuous to say you stand in solidarity with these people when the reason they fled in the first place is because of your leadership.
Yeah, and her leadership has been absolutely horrible, right? There's been significant evidence that's already been put forth to the public that she has direct ties to the cartel. I think there was over 37 political assassinations while she was running for president. A bunch of them her rivals, right? This is a lady that's benefited, that is corrupt to the bone, has financially benefited off that corruption. And it's the type of corruption and decay in moral values and ethics that have been happening to Mexico, specifically in their leadership class. Their elites have been extremely corrupt for generations now. And that's why we've had generations, going back to the 70s, of illegal Mexicans coming here en masse, trying to escape the hopelessness and despair that is Mexico, right? Like, let's be honest. Mexico is not planning for the future the same way that America is. They're not innovating the same way. Like, I'm sorry, but it's just a fact. Mexico doesn't lead the world in patents. Mexico doesn't lead the world in Nobel scientists. Mexico is not a beacon of innovation. They're not called, the new tech startup capital of the world or anything like Israel is, right? Like, right. This is a country that's not producing and living off of the backs and success of America, the American economy, American resources, and the American petrodollar. And by being so close to us, they benefit more than any other country off of us.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And with that, they still aren't able to make any changes in their country. And I just want to say, like, I'm very disappointed because she's one of my people. I believe she's a physicist. And I'm very disappointed because I like to think that physicists are the smartest people on this planet, but just like any other field, there are people who squeeze by and can be in that field and pass through without actually being intelligent. It just goes to show that what happens in university and academia doesn't reflect your intelligence and knowledge as a human being. And once again, college is a scam because you have this idiot who's criticizing and demonizing Americans because her people came over here from their poverty-stricken, terrible nation and risked the chances of an altercation that ends in death. And it really is her fault. It's her fault. There's nobody to blame but the leadership of the government of Mexico, and she is in charge. It's the blood of those people lays on her hands 100%.
Yeah, I agree with it. And Scheinbaum didn't start this problem, but she's perpetuating a generational problem that is continuing. And she's not doing anything to fix it. And it's unfortunate. Now, I wonder if the Mexican people feel the same way as the elites running their country do.
In terms of if they're angry at her leadership and think she's failed, or if they think that, or are you saying that they also agree that America is responsible and evil and all of this for the deaths of those people? Is that what you're saying?
That is an interesting question, but I was thinking more of along the lines of Claudia Scheinbaum is calling for the United States to be an open borders, borderless society, right? We should take in all the migrants that are making their way north, and we should do that and afford them the same rights, luxuries, and benefits as any other American. So that's what she's calling us to do. In Mexico, they've kind of had open borders, and like how are the Mexican people responding to that? Are they doing? Are they comfortable with the policies that she has put forth and what's led to waves of migrants in Mexico now? And I don't think so.
Right. So and this is the another piece to this story, right? Because what we have is it's not just crossing over the southern border. It's not just Mexicans. It's all of these other nations send their immigrants to Mexico to cross over illegally, and they pay the cartel and all this stuff to get over here. And so you have this flood of immigrants that's coming into Mexico thinking, I'm going to get up into America and enter into America illegally. But Donald Trump put an end to that. He has eliminated illegal border crossings at that. So now you have all of these immigrants who aren't Mexican natives living in their land that can't now get to America, and they're there. and presumably they're taking up their resources and all these other things. And it's led to outrage within the communities. There's protests breaking out about the immigrants and even American immigrants, right? Which is another ironic aspect to this. During COVID, you had all these people fleeing America down to Mexico, or even not just that, but people who were retiring and wanted to live like kings. So they were taking their finances down there. And so what particularly happened with COVID is everybody, and especially in California, they're in the tech industry. A lot of their jobs can be done from home. They realized this. So Google and these other companies basically will allow them to work from home. Well, if I'm working from home, why don't I make $250,000? But instead of living in the shithole San Francisco, where cost of living is out of control, I moved down to Mexico, where it's wicked cheap to live. I can work from home, have a property there, and do all this. And so they migrated into Mexico to flee from the United States. And what's funny is the same things that we're complaining about here with open immigration, they're complaining about the same things down there. Property values are going up. People aren't assimilating, so it's washing out their culture. And these are the same complaints that we're getting up here north of the border. And now they're facing them in Mexico. Some might say it's karmic justice because they allowed for it to happen to America. So now they're reaping what they sowed. But we did have another video of the protesters, specifically speaking on the gentrification movement. But did you want to comment before we watch that on any of what you just said?
Yeah, and it is crazy. Nobody really saw this coming. It's almost like when Trump reinstated the Remain in Mexico policy, he was pulling an Uno reverse card, if you will. and it's funny. And like you said, it's led to waves of protests about the gentrification from the Americans that have moved down to Mexico City. Well, at the same time, it's led to extreme riots to the point that there's been multiple shootings. There's been allegations that the cartel has been executing migrants. They've burned down multiple migrant shelters in Tijuana, for example, where multiple people have died there. So it's interesting because the criticism of Americans who are a little bit more hawkish on immigration, like we are in the Trump administration, is they say that you're racist and you're evil and you're mean and you're heartless and you're worse than Hitler. But then when you look at what's actually happening, no Americans are burning down migrant shelters. No Americans are killing migrants. No Americans are abusing them at all. No Americans are even protesting them, right? Conservatives are not out protesting migrants. What we're doing is we're exercising our vote and expecting our politicians to implement policies. However, in Mexico, they're actually killing people over this. Who's the real racist?
Yeah, and that's interesting. We do have some sort of constraint, and perhaps that's a reflection of a nation that's been under the oppressive thumb of the cartel for so long that violence is just kind of second nature. And look at, like, I get being upset with the immigration thing. Like that's a real thing. Like, and they should be up in arms about it, right? Because the same thing that is happening here in America, which is we have these floods coming in and they're shifting the whole framework of our entire nation. We have basically sub-communities evolving within American societies that don't resemble anything like America. And so it seems reasonable for me for those same concerns to happen in Mexico with all these immigrants. And it really is a failure of their leadership because they should have stepped in and mitigated this whole process and the cartel and the shipping people across the American border. They should have been helping America to fight against this, and their country would be in a better position than it is right now. But these protests are getting super violent over there, and people are losing their lives. So I guess America does have one up on that. They at least haven't gone to that extreme over on the left as they have down in Mexico.
Well, and a lot of it comes down to culture. Unfortunately, America has a culture where we believe in education, we believe in social mobility, we believe in people owning and starting their own small businesses. We're a pick yourself up by the bootstraps culture in society. Unfortunately, that's not the case in Mexico.
No, it isn't. And it's unfortunate because, I mean, in my opinion, every nation should adapt the fundamental principles of being an American, because then your nations will be successful. The blueprint's already been laid, right? Like nobody
Right.
can debate what America is. And if you want your nation to be successful like America is, then why not adapt and become what America is? Like whenever I was trying to become anything, I looked at whoever was the best at it and I replicated exactly what they did. I did it in bodybuilding and I did it with all aspects of my life. And that is how you accomplish something. People have already paved the way, right? All you have to do is look to them and be like, this is how they're doing things. Maybe we should adapt some of those structures into our government and we can be successful too. But you have to change it. Like you have to uproot culture, and like you see it in sports, right? Like the football team will have a huge off season and they're going to run house and it's going to be just domination. And then what you find out is that there's some sort of cultural problem inside. And I'm not talking cultural in terms of identity or whatever, but just like your culture of whatever. And they end up failing and having an unproductive season. Why? Because they have a lazy culture, a victim culture, all these different negative things that will take down a team. And you have to find a way to get those out of your people, the psyche of your people, and change the structure of what it means to be, again, the same thing that we always talk about, duty to your nation, right? Like, how do you end decade or generations and generations of that type of mentality to get them to shift to have the innovative, like the whole American identity sort of thing. But it's a failure on the Mexican government. And I think that it is, I just think it's ironic. The whole story is ironic because here are the things that we're facing in America, and Mexico is in support of that same thing. Like, oh, you should help out, blah, 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 whatever. And then in turns, now that they're facing the same problems that America is facing from the same exact issues, now all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, we can't have this. And so it's just talking out of both sides of your mouth. And whenever you can, like, this is such a dramatic incident. So whenever I see like that talking out of both sides of your mouth hypocrisy sort of thing, it just cracks me up, because how do you rationalize, how do you come to terms with what you're saying when your belief is contradicting what you were 20 minutes ago? And this is just a big example of that whole karmic justice irony. Alanis Morissette shout out, isn't it ironic? And anyway, it's just unbelievable. You were the one that turned me on to this story today. I wasn't even aware of the statements from Scheinbaum or whatever her name is, and I wasn't aware that these protests have been taking place for some time now, about a year now. These protests have been going on, and I haven't heard anything about it in mainstream media or anywhere. And it makes me wonder why, because on the conservative side, this is a perfect opportunity to take this and juxtapose it to what's happening in America and be like, let's compare these two and see how certain beliefs and ideologies don't follow the same logic. And anyway,
I also think this should be a wake-up call to America. The Mexican elites that run their country, they're not partnering with us to be allies, right? This is not a mutually beneficial relationship where we're both rooting for each other's success in a cooperative partnership. They are here to exploit us. They are here to take advantage of us. They want to use our kindness and our rights that we afford people in our country against us to their benefit. They are not benevolent. And this should be a wake-up call to all Americans. Like, we need to be aware of this. I'm not saying that there are enemies or anything, Maybe they are, but I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we know this is not a cooperative, mutually beneficial partnership.
Absolutely. And I want to bring in this video.
Gringo, go home.
It starts off right here. I think this just encapsulates the whole story right here. This is a short little clip. We'll play this right here.
Gringo, go home. Pero yo no.
Ironic.
The locals in Mexico City have began attacking American-owned businesses, blaming foreign residents and remote workers for the rising costs of living.
La gente está muy molesta y claro, con justa razón.
Esta tarde hubo una marcha en la Ciudad de México contra la gentrificación.
La gentrificación.
Gentrificación. What do you think about gentrification?
About what?
Gentrification.
Gentrification?
Gentrification.
Oh, I think it's important.
Nos están imponiendo otro puto idioma, nos están chingando en la economía, nos están imponiendo sus costumbres, nos están privando de nuestras costumbres.
Llegaron los norteamericanos, nuestros espacios, nuestra cultura se está viendo amenazada. Decía mi amiga, mis chilaquiles ya no pican por su culpa.
¿Cómo se llaman expats?
Expats.
Sí.
Expats como expansión.
Expatriotados. Sí, ¿no? Creo que es por eso.
Van a llamarse inmigrantes.
Podría estar.
Porque para los inmigrantes son de tez morena, son mexicanos, son de Latinoamérica, pero nunca son ellos porque son blancos, son nice, son fancy.
Tú pareces de Los Ángeles. Tú...
All right. I wanted to stop it there for a second because it is hilarious that these are like.
This has got to be an SNL skit. Like, this can't be real life at all. This is too preposterous. So for those in the audience that weren't seeing the video, maybe you're listening while you're driving to work right now. Basically, it's this news agency that's going around, and they're capturing the amount of violent protests that are going on because white people from America are moving down to Mexico. And there's violence. They're destroying businesses. They're destroying people's houses. They're destroying public like utilities and stuff for some weird reason. And there's a lot of anger and rage about it.
And you have them complaining. So we've seen in there, they're invading our spaces and washing away our cultures. And their food is no longer spicy because they have to capitulate to the gringos because the gringos have more money. I don't know if I can say that on TOS. And it's just hilarious to me because whenever Americans try to speak out like, yo, our culture is vanishing, we're having to capitulate to these immigrants that are moving in, we're called a racist. And these are just immigrants seeking a better life. But then when we flip it onto the other side, and it's white people moving to the other country, immigrating, they're not trying to have a better life. They're not trying to escape for a better life and make a better life, which clearly they are. They've established businesses in the area and they're contributing to their economy. They're clearly trying to make a better life for themselves, but they want to frame it as gentrification rather than seeking a better life and all that. And I just think it's asinine. And how could you possibly speak out of both sides of your mouth?
Yeah, and again, that's another leftist, liberal, illogical fallacy, right? When a black person moves into a white neighborhood, it's considered a great thing. When a white person moves into a black neighborhood, it's called gentrification, and they're losing their culture. So it's just an illogical fallacy. It's a double standard. It doesn't work both ways. And that's why I reject those principles.
Yeah, how could you? Like, people like us, we like to make sure that our logic applies in all situations. And so, like, again, like, I feel for you down there, right? Because your culture is important, right?
I'm rooting for the Mexican nationalists.
Yeah, 100%, dude. They should have their country, and they should have a country that thrives and is successful and promotes innovation. It promotes hard work. It promotes all those things. So, like, when your culture starts to get washed away by another culture, like, I understand the animosity towards that. I understand prices going up. That's the same thing that we're talking about here in America. And we want those same things, right? We want affordable housing. We want our cultures to remain intact in our communities. These are things that we're aligned closely with. But I say I want that in America. And I also say, I want that for you in Mexico, right? I don't say, I want that in America and then say, oh, you know what? White people should take over Mexico. I don't say this. So why do you say that? If you condemn what is happening in Mexico with the white people American invasion, and then you must also come on to this side and say you don't support it over here as well. And that's all I ask. Like, I'm a reasonable man. If you're going to be committed to a worldview, you better make sure that logic tracks for any scenario in which that logic can be mapped onto. And they don't do it. And it just, it is an SNL skit, bro. Like, you can't even write this stuff. And thank you for turning me on to this, because I never would have even heard about this. Nobody's talking about this.
Yeah, nobody's covering it for some weird reason.
Not in any way, shape, or form. But we got you here at Crossfire Republic. We're bringing all the news stories that they're trying to bury. So make sure you like, share, subscribe. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let us know you support us. Let's keep growing this platform so that we can get the truth out to the people and really expose these logical fallacies by the communists.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know that there's much else to touch there. Like, I just wanted to talk about it. You brought it up and I wanted to talk about it because of those contradictions and like how Mexico and these other nations, and I've been a proponent of this, like, I empathize with people who are in shitty situations because their nation has failed them. But it's their nation's responsibility to step up and fix their shit. It's not America's responsibility to take in everybody. We only have so much land. We only have so much resources. Go ahead.
One of the interesting things about Crossfire Republic is that we talk about the macro level, and then, throughout every episode, we get into the micro. And this is another example. Like, yes, it is the Mexicans' government. It's their responsibility and job to act ethically, to not be corrupt, to do the right thing for their people. And they don't. At the same time, it's the Mexican, the individual Mexican citizens' responsibility to do the right thing en masse. And that doesn't happen as well.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to point out, because at the end of the day, it's always about personal accountability. Everything always flows upwards. So government and all that will always reflect the majority of the population, right? If people wanted to shut down OnlyFans and all that, if there was a hunger and thirst for this, it would get shut down because for fear that they'll lose votes, right? So it's up to each individual person to live with morals and ethics, to be driven, to have commitment and duty, responsibility to your people, to your community, to your families. It's all about all that personal accountability, right? Extreme ownership, that whole mentality is really where it starts. And sitting back playing victim and the government should do this and ought to do that doesn't really mean much until you put pressure on them as an individual. And that all starts from the ground up. Every single time.
Yep, that's right. And I wish the best for Mexico, but I unless they change their tone, I'm going to consider them a laughing stock. I mean, this Claudia Sheinbaum is basically the Jay Cutler of Mexican presidents.
and never accomplished anything except Marion Cavalieri, Laguna Beach, whatever. Yeah, accomplished exactly zero. Just a pretty face to look at. Couldn't maneuver in the pocket. Couldn't throw a football to save his life.
More interceptions than touchdowns in the playoffs. That's all you need to know.
That's the only thing you need to know. And she is the political version of that. Exactly. Well, let's step past that. Let's talk about the last thing on the agenda today, which is the Iranian war update. Why don't you go ahead and fill us in, because you're more I've been kind of off the grid today. So
this is kind of breaking news right now. I know this episode is going to come out a little bit later, but basically, Donald Trump has authorized strikes on IRGC individuals and they've already conducted strikes on barracks, on soldiers outside of barracks, and are already taking out soldiers. And then they've also conducted, the last I saw was 4 strikes on bridges. And some of these bridges were the key logistical routes that afforded trade between their country and China and the rest of Asia. So it's just interesting that it seems like the intensity has been ramped up. What's important to remember that this is off the backdrop of Donald Trump's proclamation that there had been another 90-day ceasefire. What he said was basically a preliminary agreement to a deal to end the Iran war. It's also important to remember that that ceasefire agreement has been broken multiple times by Iran already.
Right, and he's gotten some criticism and feedback, or as far as like he just had a meeting with, and that's one thing I respect and love about President Trump, is that he's always in front of the camera. He's always doing interviews. He's always doing that. And we didn't get a lot of that out of the last administration specifically. So love him or hate him, he's always in front of the camera. He's always given updates and all that. And in this update, they were asking basically, why even give them the shot or whatever. And I think it was admirable that he tried to work with them diplomatically before going to war. I think that probably strategically there was a lot of advantages, right? So like a lot of this is if we can slow the energy supply to China, this sets them back in terms of advancing technology industry, all of these sort of things, and kind of gives America more leverage over them. So there's this whole strategic thing. And I think that maybe that's part of the why, and I don't know, I'm speculating, but why drag it out? It seems to me the longer this goes on, the more that other our adversarial nations are hurt by it, and that can only be a good thing for America. And then the other thing that I wanted to say, oh goodness, fill me in. Dead air.
Yeah, and so we already did a whole episode about some of the strategic benefits and calculations behind the Iran war. I forget what the name of that episode was, but our audience will know. We'll put a link to it in the description. But we are already talked about the strategy from there. I think what's really interesting here is how it seems like Trump is ramping up the intensity and ramping up the action, because some of the criticism, while I agree with you, I think it's notable and admirable in looking for a diplomatic solution. At some point in time, after our 20, some odd years of being at war with Iran, basically we've been in a Cold War with Iran since 79, but Iran was a big part of who we were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, as far as they would send soldiers over across the border in both countries, oftentimes, or produce the weapons or smuggle the weapons in, and supplies and so forth. So we've dealt with them for over 20 years now. We have to know at some point in time that we can't negotiate with these people, that they are not reasonable, that they do not take us seriously. And this is one of the things I heard somebody say, that like we're thinking about the future a couple years from now and trying to predict it and plan for it. And yet the people that we're negotiating with are planning for the afterlife.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. So we should just went in balls to the walls and brought them to their knees and begged them for mercy and begged them for a ceasefire, or made them beg, not us begging, retraction, make them beg for a ceasefire because we were dominating them so much. But I think that's where we're at right now, right? And I stand in full support of that. We need to bring them to their knees. There's nothing good about the regime that's in charge of that nation. They don't want anything good from America. and or anything good for America. And it's in our best interest to try to mitigate that. And in return, here's the thing that's left out of the whole mix is like, you have these Persian people who were basically colonized by the Arab nations. And you'll have to update me on, I forget, was it the Ottoman Empire?
Yes.
I believe during the Ottoman Empire came through and stripped. Persians weren't Muslims. They weren't Islam by nature. They were
Zoroastrians.
Yeah, and they were invaded by these Islamic empire and forced under that governance structure. And so really the people of Iran, the Persians, they deserve their autonomy and and it's been off and on, right? They had it for a certain period. And we've already talked about all that, but I think that, another key factor is that the people of Persia deserve to have this regime removed so that they can return to some sort of what they had before in the 70s or what have you.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about, I guess, the welfare of Iran that much. Of course, I don't root for failure for them. I hope they prosper and do well. But I just think the whole thing is I don't know. I just kind of think that we really need to have an aggressive approach with them because I think it's the humane thing to do. Now, that sounds a little contradictory, but let me explain myself. What I mean is that when a war drags on for an extended period of time, you have more deaths. The deaths become intergenerational if the war extends long enough, like a war like Afghanistan. Not only that, but you have more civilians that aren't military assets that are affected and negatively impacted by the war. So when you get a strong country like America that is pussyfooting around because they want to save lives, by dragging on the war, which is extremely depressing their economy, potentially leading to famine, decreasing, I guess, the function of their hospitals and healthcare system. And at this point, we've had a blockade on them for months now. If that drags on for years because you're unwilling to go in there and fight and do what you have to do to a number of people, how often or how much worse does that make the situation for the everyday Iranian, right? And if we look at this, I could compare it to history. What was, I guess, how was the Union Army doing during the Civil War before Sherman's march, and how did it look afterwards? And I guess you got to say the amount of deaths after Sherman's march was significantly less, right? The amount of resistance that you got from the Confederacy after Sherman's march, where he basically destroyed Atlanta, destroyed the plantations on his way down, destroyed the railroads, destroyed the infrastructure. He literally forced all of the Atlanta residents to get up and move. And destroyed their houses, set stuff on fire, literally caused a mass exodus from there. And what happened? It brought about a much quicker, less bloody conclusion to the war. So I just wonder if applying the same principles, or, I know I'm ranting here, but we could even look at Curtis LeMay and the use of the atomic weapon in Japan. I'm not saying that this calls for an atomic weapon equivalency. What I'm talking about is the aggression, the strategy, the idea that we're going to go in hard and we're going to do what it takes to win the first time so that we don't protract the war over a several year period. Like the predictions, so when you combine Tokyo and when you combine Nagasaki and Hiroshima, I believe there was under 1 million deaths total. When you look at what the projection for invasion of Japan was, it was over 5 million American deaths alone, not counting all the Japanese people that would have died right there. So I ask you, like, which one is more noble or more honorable, or which one is more, I guess, concerning for the citizens? The one that hits hard and fast and does the damage, or the one that is slow, soft, and turns into what we saw with Gaza?
I mean, they taught us this in the military, right? Like when we're going in for a room clearance, what do? We kick in the door and we enter the room with violence. You get in there, move violence with aggression, and execute the mission. And that's the best way to keep everybody safe. And that's a good point, dude. If you're looking at how long it extends out, the longer it extends out, the more opportunity there is for more people to die, more casualties. And so by entering it, I think you've changed my mind on this. I'm actually disappointed at Trump now for not coming in aggressively from the beginning. You've changed my mind. Where's the sign? I support Trump's diplomatic solution. Change my mind. You changed my mind. I think the right answer was to go in, enter it with aggression, with purpose, with violence, and to put an end to it sooner rather than later, because you are sparing more lives. The fact of the matter is it had to happen. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This Iran situation had to happen for the sake of America. And if it is the case that it had to happen, in order to reduce casualties, we should have went in there, balls to the walls, no pussyfooting around it, get in, cause the damage, and then get out, put an end to it, and be done with it. And that you're right. That's what should have happened. And hopefully we're at a point now where that is going to happen. It sounds like with all the strikes that are taking place today, that is what happens. And I think that is probably the right move.
Yeah, that's what I would like to see. I think when you talk to a lot of veterans, I think the biggest criticisms that I hear often from veterans about the GWAT wars was the lack of aggression from the top leadership.
Yeah, and our hands were, and GWAT, just for those who aren't privy, is Global War on Terrorism. So this encompasses Iraq, Afghanistan. And our hands, politically, our hands were tied, bro. We really, like, outside of like physical violence upon us, like after it has already happened, we couldn't really do anything. And even when violence was put upon us, we were really restricted in what we could do to return fire. And I mean, that hamstrung anything. You allow for them to refit, refuel, recover, and keep resupplying the terrorism. It's just going to continue to drag on. The proper method is to get in there, fucking balls to the walls, blow everything up, and get on with our days. And if we would have done that, there would have been different results. Who knows? But yeah, man. Yeah. I think my point was that our hands were restricted because we couldn't get approval for a lot of escalation of force and all that stuff.
Yeah. Like, for example, we weren't allowed to use artillery. We were allowed to use some mortars, but like 777s were off the table.
Yep. Right. And this probably, because of these restrictions, probably cost American lives that could have been prevented had we been able to utilize our force appropriately.
Right. And that's absolutely it. And that's why a lot of veterans criticize those wars, because some people say that we weren't really trying to win, and
sure.
I don't see stuff like that myself. Yeah. I view it a little bit differently, but I do sympathize with the position that I agree we should have been more aggressive. I think being more aggressive is the humane thing to do. I think it's the honorable thing to do. I also think from a strategic perspective, it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a hot take, bro. We're clipping that one and we're sending it out to the ether. Coming in with more violence is the humane thing to do. Get on there, get in the comment section. You liberals that I know you're hate watching our podcast, you commies. Leave your comments in the comment section. You are commies after all. Leave comments in the comment section about why it is inhumane to drag out a war rather than to go in and end it quickly with violence. And the one last thing that I wanted to make a point about was balls. Oh, I wanted to do a call to action here, if I may. This is why it is important for you America First Republicans to grab your nuts, quit being feminized, team up with the conservatives. Let's get in there, do our business, show them that America is still strong. We are still warriors. And if you step out of line, we will come out and we will put an end to that. You need to stop evading this. You need to stop saying, living on the fence or siding with the communists. Jump on our side, grab your nutsack, squeeze that baby, and let's make some decisions that are going to make people's tummies hurt. It's fine. People's tummies can hurt. They take their Tums and their Pepto-Bismol and get over it. All right. But this is what's in the best interest of our nation. And we need to support President Trump and the administration in the execution of this mission because it is crucial to the safety and security of America's future.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is being the world's hegemonic power like we are, we get a lot of benefits by being that. But with those benefits, I actually comes times when we will have to exercise our power and our authority to maintain and keep those benefits. And if we don't have the ability to exercise that power, like, for example, if we can't win a war against Iran, then we're nothing more than a paper tiger, and we don't deserve to have the benefits and luxuries that our ancestors have worked hard for.
100%, bro. And that should be the final message that we leave. All right. We can't be a paper tiger folded under a little bit of pressure. We are Americans. Let's bring 1980s America back. I want all of my soldiers on steroids, jacked out of their mind. I want my soldiers deadlifting 500 pounds, squatting 600 pounds, and benching 415. Let's go. Let's make our army strong again. Let's exercise that force and put evil in its place. And
let me just clarify to the audience what Cujo's talking about here is that the U.S. Army just said that they're going to start doing tests on the soldiers, right?
I was going to caveat into that.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's our thing. I was going to caveat into that because in our previous episode, no more than 2 weeks ago, we filmed, and I'm on record saying, I want my soldiers on steroids. Let's make America jacked again. And what does Pete Hegseth do? He gets my boys on testosterone. Let's go. We need a strong fighting force. All right, go ahead.
No, that's because he's a listener of the show and one of our biggest fans.
He is. He's a tier one. What is it? What does Felger say? He's a tier one listener. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, tier one listener.
He's an everyday listener. Pete Hegseth is listening. We're advocating. So it's best if you subscribe, like, and share. Maybe you have some perspectives. I'll reach out to my boy Hegseth and spread the knowledge. Maybe we can get your initiatives going too. All right, brother. Well, is there anything else you wanted to touch on? We're just under 3 hours here, so not too bad of a podcast. I think we talked about a lot of great issues today, and there's always so much going on. It's hard to keep up, and editing is slow. Any editors out there that are looking to break in the industry, please help me. We can film, but I can't pump these out fast enough. I need help. Reach out to me, DM me, let me know, and we can talk about some compensation. I need help editing these so we can get them out on time. With that, though, I think we'll close up shop. Remember, Crossfire Republic, spread the word, like, share, comment, and let's keep growing this platform and talking about these real issues. Regardless or not, we're still going to pump out the content. Win, lose, or fail, we'll be here. We got your back here at Crossfire Republic. Big agendas, bring back 80s America, and let's make America better than Rome. Let's reach 1,000 years and further and beyond. That's all we got here at Crossfire Republic. We'll go ahead and end it there. Casey, thanks for being on, bro. I can't wait till the next one.
All right, bro. Thanks.
All right. Have a good night, brother.
You too.